Hey, howdy. We'll let Facebook do its thing real quick. Welcome once again to... we're building an audience. I guess I should just do nothing until somebody shows up, and then if somebody shows up, and then I should start mentioning that we're going to do that. I can go over a little bit of the outline for tonight real quick. Maybe that's a good idea to start with before people really show up or anything. So we're going to talk first a little bit about some of my racist trolls here on the website and on my wall. They're always fun. A little bit about a general theme for QP and my website. Howdy. Starting at 5:33. Not bad, not bad. Good. My connection still sucks, but whatever. Talking about, what's up, Tisa? And talking about general theme, the perfect being the enemy of the good. A little bit of gaming stuff real quick. See if people like that. The ACA Repeal, what's going to happen on there. Some science stuff. The victory tour and fascism. And then a little bit of Westworld discussion. Somebody else accidentally clicked that I know from a long time ago. Sup, folks? Sup, everybody? Welcome, it's Sunday night. It's time for Escaping Dystopia! So, somebody said I should do some sort of theme song or something, but I'm just gonna have fun. So, where are we at? Yeah, so this is kind of one of the things, like this I think is actually kind of a big news story, is still the election and the popular vote and some discussion and stuff going around that. My racist trolls part of it is just kind of the tenor of the folks that I'm talking to about this, because I happen to know some of these people. The guy who actually started the alt-right, the Spencer guy, is actually from Dallas, Texas, the same place that I am. I believe he's like 38 or so. So, yeah, this is my generation, my peeps down in Dallas. I know this culture very much, of this alt-right stuff, and we're not racist, we just don't think racists should combine. Whatever, yeah. So, trying to get across this point, and the whole point on Hillary winning the popular vote is as a tempering the mandate of the coming administration, saying, yes, you won the Electoral College, we'll see, but you need to realize that more people voted for your opponent, and therefore there needs to be a little bit of tempering, right, of what's going on. That's not at all what's happening right now. The cabinet that they're putting together is insanely right-wing. It's really just beyond what I think is actually, workable. We'll get to that a little bit later. But that's the whole point of that discussion, and having them understand that, yes, we'll see if the electors vote for him. I think it's going to be funny. This is actually kind of one of those questions that I think is real, because I do kind of think that's kind of the point of the Electoral College, is to kind of stop this kind of buffoonery. But I think there's been like 3 or 4 so far that have said, no, we're not gonna vote for him. But I'd love to. I don't know I guess it goes to Congress if they do that. But the dissonance in this, just the cognitive dissonance, is this is that world when people, the concept when people can't accept something they don't want to, and they just dismiss it. And so we're seeing that, and there's going to be a lot of that going on. So I wanted to talk a little bit about a general concept, and this is also part of the philosophy part of the night. That is, I think, a bigger issue in our society moving forward. And this is the notion that the perfect is the enemy of the good. And that they must fight. And then if you have something that you think is really great, but it's not perfect, so it sucks. And anything that you measure against perfection will come up short. And as we have this access to instant optimization now, in our current society, you get to see things that are really, really good, but not perfect, and also a continued concept, this would be perfect if this were to happen. And so we have this just tension between this really good thing and an imperfect solution. I think Hillary was a good example of this during the campaign, where, obviously a very imperfect candidate, but then not being considered a good candidate because of that. But then, she gets more votes than anybody but Obama on one day back 4 years ago. So anyway, that was kind of the point of that. And so this notion and this enemy, this perfect being the enemy of the good, shows up over and over and over again. And it's used to deconstruct and tear apart good things and saying, and this also goes into the media discussion, and this happened from Trump himself, when discussing the intelligence that's coming over, saying the Russians are doing all this, and how do you reconcile your views with what the people in the intelligence community is telling you? And it's like, well, I just whatever. I don't believe them. They were wrong once before. Don't you know? They were wrong once before. They got that Iraq thing wrong. You remember? So therefore, they aren't perfect. And so therefore, I'm not going to even listen to their briefings. So I'm gonna get to this a little bit later. Sorry, but there's this notion of, again, that something that's not perfect is therefore not good. Is I think very destructive for our society moving forward. And I think we need to differentiate between those two and realize things aren't going to be perfect ever, because perfection is a goal, not something that you actually can attain, and that we find good things beyond that. In my model, and we'll talk about this once I get this out and the book is all out there and I can reference this a little bit more, this general theme of what a good solution is for a particular issue, or a good answer versus a perfect one, becomes very actually graphically clear. This is part of the model that I talk about, and how there's this, it differentiates this ambiguity between something that's kind of good and almost good and not good, and then you always have this perfect thing. So as you compare and contrast like decisions and possibilities moving forward, being able to differentiate between something that is good and perfect and is important, and understand that even though something is not perfect but still good, it's definitely acceptable. Because perfection, again, is a goal. It's not an actual attainable thing. There's always something off in one direction or another. So we need to be, I think, more accepting as a society of this understanding that the good is good and the perfect is an ideal. And so being able to want to talk about Scott Pruitt. I was going to get to that a little bit here. If I can do like a couple things real quick. But Pruitt is the guy from Oklahoma, right? The EPA guy who's doesn't like the EPA. I'll get to that in a little bit. I think I want to talk about one thing first. And one of the things that's going to happen really fast, and I don't think everybody understands this, the repealing of the ACA. Oh, I was going to do the game stuff. I'll go to that later. But the repealing, one of the first things that the Republican Congress, the EPA is toast. I agree, and we'll talk about that. It's horrible. This is going to be a huge story for a long time. A lot of stuff is toast. But one of the first things that's going to be toast is the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. And one of the things that's immediately going to happen, and this is actually when Trump went out to dinner in New York and he said, oh, we're going to get your taxes down quick. This is one of the first and quickest ways that he's going to be able to cut all their taxes. I don't think this is terribly common knowledge, and if you quizzed people now, I don't think they would know. There was a 3.8% investment income tax, which is essentially like big money tax for people making more than $200,000 a year in the ACA, 3.8%. And there was also a 0.9% tax for Medicare. All together, both, again, for the same tax bracket. So altogether, there's a 4.7% tax for the wealthy in the Affordable Care Act, in Obamacare. This has been like that the whole time. This is part of why it has worked to help stabilize the finances for Medicare. And so when they repeal it next month, in addition to people like myself never being able to get insurance again. No, they're going to keep that part. They're going to keep that part. Yeah, public school excellence. Yeah, so the ACA, so it's going to be a big tax cut for all his wealthy donors. So I'll talk about that later. And the school excellence, public school excellence. So his people who aren't familiar with this, the lady that he's wants to appoint for education secretary is not a big fan of public education. It's hard to say it any other way, as far as I can tell. And she spent her whole life pushing for, and there's going to be a lot of this, and the Republicans in Congress, I think, will go along with this notion that you silly liberals have, that there is a separation between church and state is just so, that's part of just the alt-left liberals. So they're going to do stuff to push, and from that point, I'm going to have to do a little bit more digging, and this is some of those things where I will continue to educate myself and pass along that information about what kind of damage these kind of people can do. For HUD, right, for Housing and Urban Development, with Carson, who doesn't necessarily believe in public housing and urban development, you have, again, this same it's like I don't know if this is going to happen, but Rick Perry for the Department of Energy, which is one of those, give me a minute, it was one of those departments that he wanted to get rid of, and if that comes true. Now, the one thing that I think is interesting on this, and this is why I think this is going to be able to happen, and why it's going to get a little odd going forward, is I don't know if you guys follow NPR. I do sometimes. I have trouble with NPR because their representation of the right is this guy named David Brooks. And he's one of those people who just is so ridiculously frustrating. But when faced with these cabinet choices, and all of these, as a couple people have noted, these people don't agree with their job. But when it was pointed out to him by the left-leaning commentator, he's like, no, they do. They just believe in it different. Not like Tillerson for sex state. I don't even know what that is. Nobody thinks that is right. I mean, this guy got, I believe, a medal from Putin for being a super friend of Russia. But it looks like, there's... it's really odd. I don't think, and this is what's curious, is for people who are actually paying attention, some of my friends and all that, I think the people who aren't paying attention, all they've seen since the election is, oh yeah, he's fighting for jobs, man. Like a lot of the non-people, they don't understand all the department appointments and what they mean. Like the Secretary of State thing, the Department of Education, the EPA. These are all just, again, this is the Guardian behind-the-scenes stuff that never matters. They don't understand how these things interact with their daily lives. And perhaps we'll see now more of that, because when government shutdowns happen, right, all of a sudden people are like, oh, that was the government did that? I thought it just happened. There's government does that? Oh, shit. I guess we better turn the government back on. So... I think we'll see that on a number of levels. The question is how long and how to go forward. One of the things, actually, I kind of skipped over a little bit was a little bit of science stuff. Michelle, I actually did an intro. You missed it. It was pretty cool. It's like, escaping dystopia! I need to work on it. That's the name of my show, if there is a show. I was going to do a little bit of science stuff. We're about halfway through the show. And we'll go back to some more things, because actually, you guys are mentioning a lot of these... oh, you have no idea. My redneck voices go on forever. I did this the other day. I was like, can I do 7 different redneck voices? Well, you could, but maybe that'd be too many. Oh, motherfucker, you got to get redneck. I can do dumb all day long. I've interacted with dumb a lot. I know how to play dumb quite well. From Texas. So the science thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit is this really cool article, and I'll link it on my website. I'm doing, again, summaries of all the shows, and I put them on the website, escapingdystopia.com, plug, and with links to other stuff. So if you miss a show or whatever, you can go and read it there, or you want to see stuff. One of the things I wanted to talk was really cool was about like the short life of octopuses. And let me go back just slightly. There's an article I posted the other day about Richard Feynman. He's my favorite physicist, or if you have a hero physicist, just because he's a really cool guy. He was fun. He's got a good book. But one of the things he talks about is about when you can understand something. How to know if you understand it is if you can explain it to a child, like an 8-year-old. There's a couple other things in this great article. Again, I'll link it on the website. See? Plug it. My shameless self-promotion stuff I got to work on that. But his big thing, and this is something you got to be able to explain things in simple words, even complex ideas. And this is one of the things that I think actually, as I shoot myself in the face, that Trump does well, is just make up really simple ways to explain complex things. The problem is I think that's how he understands it on a certain level. We'll get back to this in a second. But the short octopus life is really interesting because I didn't know octopuses were so short-lived. I think it was actually an NPR story. And so they talk about it from an evolutionary standpoint, and that the octopus is actually a cephalopod. And most of the other cephalopods, especially the longer-lived ones, they have shells. The octopuses got out of the shells, but did so in such a way that they don't actually they reproduce before they really start to get out there and do their thing. So they're extremely fragile, and fish like to eat them a lot. My trolls posted. Oh well, if only they would post here, I could talk about how stupid they are. But I'll go delete their comments later. But as the cephalopods swim around without their shells, they're really easy to eat. So they got these really good brains and all this sorts of great camouflage and all that. And they've got this amazingly evolution to reproduce. But because of that just intense life that they have, they die very quickly. It's like 3 to 5 years for octopuses. And I think that's one of those things that is really neat, and you should read about and keep learning about the world. The whole world, and actually if you go really deep, then you have some really longer-lived octopi that live in an entirely different world. For people who are looking for alien intelligence and how to communicate with alien intelligence, there you go. If you want to find something really, really neat, go deep in the ocean. All right, so I just wanted to talk about that. That was fun. I'm going to try those science things every now and again. But back to the Victory Tour and some of the political stuff. We'll do 5 more minutes of this and then do some Westworld. He's going out there. He's doing a Victory Tour. Do you guys? I mean, do people know this? I don't actually have like cable news, so I just read my stuff and do this. Octopi, they are smart as hell. That's how they survive with no shells in the ocean, where they taste great and are like literally like the best thing ever for all fish to eat. But they survive long enough to do it. There's some really cool octopuses videos. I love octopuses. Puss. Anyway, I like that stuff. Anyway, and the word anyway is one of my favorite words. I'll try to do a show one time without saying it. I don't think I can. To continue, that plays great before the election. Now we don't care, right? This was about talking about lock her up, right? Because he's not going to prosecute Clinton because there's nothing to prosecute her because she didn't do anything. It's prosecutable. We actually covered this quite a bit. So we've got that going on. Now the Russian hacking, this stuff is finally a big story. And it's huge, good, big. I think maybe it'll stick. But again, it kind of came out on the Friday. And then Monday morning, you're going to see some crazy tweet about who knows what. And then we'll see if people keep talking about the fact that we had our elections attacked. I don't think you can have people... You think we will pardon her, even though not charged, just for the grandstanding? Oh, it's just for the spirit of unity, I shall pardon her. She didn't do anything wrong, man. Yes, I know, but just go with it. The robe is beautiful, is it not? The robe? Look at the hat. And they'll play along with it. The GOP is going to play along with all of this. I don't know if you've seen their reaction to some of the reports from the CIA, but John Cornyn and a couple other people, they're not gonna press. They don't really. Yeah, there's like, I think Cornyn's thing was, yeah, we've been being hacked for years, no big deal. It's just whatever. So we'll see what's going on with that. Yeah, so this is where I was talking about the perfect being the enemy of the good. The statement from the campaign came out and says, these are the same people that said Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. The election ended a long time ago in one of the biggest Electoral College victories in history. It is now time to move on and make America great again. This is like their official campaign statement about this. It's not true. We won huge. We're going to go do everything we want. So I don't... Again, this is kind of that cognitive dissonance, and you see that in that discussion about the vote totals for Hillary's victory. And we have also interfered with other countries' elections. Oh, yeah, we mess with elections all over the place. I mean, given the internet, how many elections has the United States created around the world? I mean, billions? Easily. On the election thing, elections, though, what if... Again, I've asked this. I've never gotten a good... If somebody ever has a good answer to this question. If the CIA had done in another democracy what the FBI did here, doing that whole, I think we're going to maybe look at this and charge her. No, we're not. We're fine. 2 weeks before an election. What would you call it? So we'll see. The FBI now even in the intelligence discussions, because, and this is interesting because the intelligence community can cheat and break laws to get stuff, and right? She loves erections, that girl. Who doesn't? But the FBI has been a little bit reluctant to call out the Russians, and they have a different standard for going after things. They have a prosecutorial standard where they're looking for hard evidence and witnesses and things like that, something that can hold up in court. Whereas in the international frame of spying and hacking into stuff and releasing stuff through an agent who's housed in the Ecuadorian embassy, you know, it's a little bit sketchier on how exactly you prosecute that. So the whole Russian tie-in, it's disturbing. I'm freaking on here going blah 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 blah. What are you going to do, though, at that point? And I think at this point we have to sit back. Because, again, Joe Sixpack is sitting back being like, Carrier, he's fighting for jobs, man! And that there's still this huge fight about fake news and what's real. Literally, the president-elect of the United States is claiming that CNN and these kind of reports about this are the fake news that other CNN stories are talking about. So I don't know if you saw, but one of the racist alt-right guys on my page is posting this CNN is the fake news and won't acknowledge that Hillary actually won the popular vote, and maybe we should temper some of these policies. You're seeing now also a literal move to fascism, and that's the big F word that we'll talk about here in politics now in the U.S. a lot. But this corporatism and nationalism tied together, that's what it's called. And it takes over. One of the things that's going to be weird is watching the internet kind of be under attack itself as its core structure. And all it's going to take is a couple tweets here, there. AT&T, not good with the stupid, dumb, or whatever. I can't even, oh, look at Comcast. Not being nice. Oh, great job there. Whatever. This is how you do this good, bad thing, tying this corporate power into the nationalism thing. So, I mean, this stuff is real and it's going to be happening. I'm going to see who some of the other appointments are. And again, you got to wait for actions, right? This is all... Maybe the Electoral College will stop it. It'll just all be fun. So there's no reason to do much now other than look at what's going on. I will say this as about a little bit of my own history and this kind of stuff. And I know that some of you who read my stuff are like, well, you were wrong about the election. You ain't perfect, so you ain't good. Well, I watched a lot of what happened during Bush's years and said, we can't really cut taxes and go to war without having some serious economic problems. And then we did, and they all crashed. And the Republicans turned around and blamed Obama. And we didn't ever have a national consensus on what caused our Great Recession. And we still don't. I don't think there is, if you ask the whole nation on what caused this Great Recession, how do we avoid it in the future, you won't get a national consensus. And you won't, particularly with the people who are going to be running the cabinet and running, the executive office now, who are the ones who would be still processing and doing this. Who would the Electoral College do you think, if not Trump? Probably be Paul Ryan. Because I think it goes to the House, I guess. I don't know exactly. I'm not on my constitutional law, but if anything weird happens, I'm sure Paul Ryan would probably win if they don't vote for him. But they'll do all that. So remember, they blamed Obama for the Bush recession, and it was only even after 8 years of Obama doing just great stuff, he only got up to 55% approval rating, and that was after having to deal with all of this. So they'll lie about recent history hardcore and do so for a long time, and the Republicans are going along with a lot of this stuff without much resistance. I think it's pretty well documented. Through the housing bubble exacerbated the CDOs on the recession. Yeah. Well, and whose fault is that? Is the question, right? It doesn't show me if people are typing, so I guess I can't know if somebody's actually going to respond or if I'm just sitting here wondering if just pointing to the physical cause. It's kind of like, well, what killed him? Well, that car hit him. I hit a button. Who killed him? That car hit him. Well, who was driving that car? So that's kind of the question on burp, free drink. I'm drinking water. I had some stuff earlier. I'm trying. Banks being smarter than regulators. In being smarter, you mean by... I'm not sure what your context is. If it lasts for more than 4... Oh, hell yeah. I got erections lasting all day. But if you're smarter than regulators, I don't know. This is kind of a big question that I've always had, and this is actually goes to. We're almost actually. I'm going to go to my Westworld discussion here shortly. We've still got time. We're early, but on the banks and regulators, and this has to do also with hackers and computer companies. And as we approach the singularity, it'll be something else too. But there's always in whatever organization, the Congress that writes law and all the regulators that make up the regulations are a certain amount of people. And versus them, there's 1 million accountants out there and 1 million tax lawyers. And there's always going to be somebody who finds the diagonal, right? Somebody who hacks the system, finds out a way to get around it or do that. It's always any human system that is designed by a certain number of humans, n, when n to the nth, right, a much larger number of humans then attacks that system, it's usually going to be torn to pieces. And so that's what happens with the tax code. It's what happens with network and computer code. Over time, you develop better things. This is also some of the international politics stuff that over time through these interactions you develop a stable international regime, right? Because everybody's trying to hack everything at the same time all over the world, and so you develop this stable international regime, which we kind of have now. But Trump, again, and I'll do this real quick with the Taiwan thing and his now comments today about, well, that one China thing should be on the table. Traders being smarter than banks. Yeah, that's a little bit inside baseball there. And actually, I was wrong. But this is going back to the time, like I was saying, the Taiwan China thing. This was a planned move by the Trump campaign to put this on the table as to try and renegotiate some of whatever with China. We'll see how that's going to work out. They are now like kind of in that panic renegotiate mode, so we'll see how that works out. I haven't read any of the latest editorials, but they had with the news actually this morning, because I guess he went to Fox to give Fox their super news interview, and he talked about that and also mentioned that he on the corruption side that he had turned down a bunch of deals this week. It was definitely planned. And that's one of the things you gotta watch out now with the tweets and him doing this stuff and all playing this stuff. He's not now at this point surrounded by complete and utter fools, but a lot of them just have some weird notions. And if something happens with Iran, we might talk about this later. Iran signed a big deal with Boeing for a bunch of jets because Iran hasn't been able to buy jets for a long time because sanctions. So they signed a big deal with them today. We'll see. It's like $17 billion. We'll see how that works out because I don't know if Boeing's good or bad today. And with that, we're going to move on to Westworld and that. If anybody wants to discuss that, we're going to... because that's enough international politics for stuff, unless anybody else wants to say something. So, I posted a thing a little while back, and it was about an Atlantic, is a magazine article, and I actually tried to look for it, didn't find it real quick. I was going to read some of it, but I won't. I'll give you the general gist of it. And this was, anybody who watched Westworld, there were some great questions and just some great... First off, let's start with the good. The movie, it's great, a lot of fun. I thought it was really well done. I enjoyed the message, I think, to the point, and just even the discussions about it. The broken time narrative, of course, I think is a blast, as always. That's kind of that modern storytelling thing. But one of the questions about it, and this is kind of the questions of the show itself and the critique of it, is whether or not experiencing these narratives and watching this kind of stuff or doing these kind of stories is a worthwhile thing for us. Is this making us better? And one of the things, and this is the show itself is asking this, and this is through the character of Will turning into the Man in Black as he experiences all his deepest, darkest, greatest fantasies over the course of his lifetime, and he becomes this like nearly soulless creature of a sort that's always kind of looking for the point of the story, right? What? Tell me the answer. What's the answer for the book? Why am I here? What's the answer for the game? What's the last? Give me the... And there's, and this question of narrative then becomes, moving through the narrative, and then the story isn't for you, right? He's trying to figure out the answer to a story that's not his story, instead of just answering it, and that's what causes a lot of the tension. And also in this Atlantic thing, it mentions, there was a thing a little while back, and there was a story about a study that was done that said people who read a lot are better at understanding and reading other people. And then a follow-up study that said that a bunch of crap, we can't replicate these, which I think anytime you see a social science study, you should mention that. But that's kind of the question, is watching these stories, watching these violent shows with sex, is this making us better? As I'm, that elite that has the HBO subscription and I get to watch this high-end drama and I'm learning so much about the world by doing so. That kind of counter-narrative over the one while you're watching it. I thought it was really fun to think about that a little bit and to have a media and a story and a source that makes you question, is this worth watching it yourself? Because there are some things that we've watched that I, just have to be like, this is not worthwhile. This is not worth wasting my time on. And having something that actually is, and then makes it all to the way to the end, and then says, yeah, you need to be wondering, like, is this making your life better? Or you just masturbating here. And that's something that I think everyone needs to keep in mind. So there's a little bit of moralizing. Now the fun stuff. One of the great things that they actually cover in that story on Westworld is the concepts and notion of consciousness and what it means to be, in fact, like a conscious being. And ultimately what they discover or talk about as the key to it being this memory of the self and this story of self that one tells. And as we look at this, and this is not a subject that this is a subject I've read a number of books on and read about over the years, and read a number of other answers from a number of different directions. But this concept of, who am I, what am I, how am I, what am I going to do, this notion and concept of self is very much built on these kind of stories. And we have in the narrative of the Westworld this one concept of the self, of gaining it through the story. And then we also see on the other side of people losing it. And we'll see this now in our health situation here in this country through the Alzheimer's actually moved up to one of the largest causes of death here in the country. But of people losing their concept of self and their notion of consciousness. And I think this will be, again, this is just kind of a discussion about that and how we will move forward and learn as a society. And I think we're going to see quite a bit of this. Moving both from the AI side, where we have so much of our society automated and run by computers, and also where we have so many people in our society breaking down mentally. And we're gonna have these both happening at the same time, which is going to be an interesting thing as we move forward. It's not exciting per se, but it's going to be one of the themes of the show. And this is why moving towards a little bit one of the things that I've talked about, and we'll mention this moving back to the political arena from the automated computer world, is that notion of a universal basic income and moving towards a society where we have everything automated by the robots and we have people allowed to just explore the world that they want to. And whether or not that is a sustainable vision in any way, shape, or form is going to be, I think, a good question, because we're going to go so far down this corporatist line where we have a 1% that's exalted beyond all meaning. And then when that crashes and burns, what's going to happen after that? Or if we can transition to something else more smoothly, I guess, is a good question. So looking at it, we're at about 37 minutes right now. And I think I've scared away everybody who was interested and stuff. So I think we're going to call that a show, folks. Man, there's some crazy stuff going on in this world, and I think you just got to keep paying attention to it. So I'm not going to stop, and I'll keep doing my thing, which has always been a lot of fun. So I hope everyone has a wonderful night, and take care, and it's almost Christmas time. So did a wonderful job on that. One of the great things about these videos is hopefully my kids will love them when they're old. If they stick around, if Facebook doesn't get banned. All right, kids. Peace out. Good night. Thanks for watching. See you next week. Probably around the same time. We'll see if anything happens this week that's worthy of context or discussion. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the financial crisis and see if we can talk about that more. So maybe if Kevin comes back next week, we can do that some more. Because I do think people need to understand that. But I don't know. It's so boring. This is supposed to be fun. So, all right. Everybody have a wonderful night. Thank you. Peace, love, and happiness.